Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm your host, Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq. We're coming to you live from Toronto, Consensus 2025 by CoinDesk. Joining me to wrap up day one segments, we have Will Peck. He's head of digital assets at WisdomTree. We're here to discuss real opportunities for tokenized real-world assets. It is great to see you as always, Will. Welcome back to Trade Talks.
Great to be with you today, Jill.
And it seems to be that is one of the biggest conversations around consensus shares, tokenization of real-world assets. It's happening. We're starting to see the value in it. And when we spoke last year, the WisdomTree Prime app available for retail investors was something that we covered. Tell us about what's happened since then and, you know, on the retail and institutional side.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, there was an election since we last spoke, and that certainly changed kind of the tenor, both in terms of, I think, you know, people speculated crypto asset prices, but from my perspective, really around stable coins and tokenization generally, right? So at the start of the year, there was something like $200 billion in stable coins, US dollar stable coins. Now there's $230 billion. I view everything in tokenization as kind of an extension of that. So from our perspective, it's just been a very constructive regulatory environment. You're seeing like the SEC Crypto Task Force, for example, you know, having a lot of dialogue with industry on this. And we think the right regulatory frameworks are getting put in place that like real innovation is going to keep being pressed forward here.
Why do you think tokenization is such a key movement as it relates to user experience that doesn't exist in TradFi today?
I mean, blockchains, public blockchains are just another ledger, right?
Right.
And I think throughout the history of financial services, you've seen improvements in like the ledgering technology that allows people to hold, transmit assets, right? Transfer assets. So from our perspective, I mean, public blockchains are really just a new, better ledger in a lot of ways for a lot of financial services functions that you might want to have, right? So like a prominent example is being stablecoins, right? So how do you move US dollars around the world? Previously in the past, you're relying on like banking systems who had their own private ledgers. And now you're seeing something where it's like, no, you've got a token on a public blockchain. You can transfer it. It's in your control from one wallet to another. And that allows for a new, different movement of value. And tokenization is just an extension of that, right? It's the same idea that me as somebody who holds an asset can transfer it to somebody else, can pledge it to something else without relying on like a central intermediary necessarily. And that's really one of the big innovations we see that's unlocking real value for people here.
So this is something akin to when you hear about developing economies using this type of technology to grow local economies for capital, you know, alternative forms of capital formation. This is essentially the technology that they're using in the absence of legacy banking institutions that we have.
Oh, absolutely. I think you're seeing around the world people leapfrogging kind of traditional fintech apps that you might have here in the US, which is really just a new front end on a consistent back end. And saying like, no, I've just got a wallet or I've got an app that I built using some sort of public blockchain infrastructure. And that holds, you know, a stable coin. It holds tokenized gold. It holds Bitcoin, whatever it might be. And that provides certainly overseas and developing markets like real utility for people. But I think it also provides utility for people here in like developed markets like the US. I mean, depending on your use case. I think a lot of people like to point out, it's like, oh, the ETF's this incredible structure. And it is. And like for investing in like, you know, a basket of the 500 largest stocks, ETFs will remain incredible. But so many businesses are saying like, hey, I want to hold value in stable coins because it's 24/7, you know, transferability that I can do payouts, for example. Well, shouldn't those customers also get the benefits of like things like ETFs where they can hold a money market fund that might trade instantly against them, or that same basket of 500 stocks, right? Like a US 500 fund, both products that WisdomTree offers, giving them the benefits of that, but just in the infrastructure that's more convenient for them.
Right. And that's what it comes down to at the end of the day when you think about consumers or institutions enabled, you know, exposure to our WAs through fully on-chain regulated structures such as WisdomTree. At the end of the day, you want the user experience to feel familiar, almost to be ubiquitous in what you're trying to accomplish, getting from A to B. I don't care how it gets there, as long as I know it gets there and I'm familiar with it.
Oh, absolutely. For people, they're not thinking about this stuff. It's all just infrastructure. They're worried about, you know, does this actually improve my user experience of day-to-day financial services? And I think going back to this point or like what changed since we last spoke is just all of this, particularly in the US, needed kind of a regulatory kind of structure framework for people to do within the regulated structures, the types of work that's going to actually like add user experience benefits for these examples that I talked about with stable coins or tokenized money market funds. And we're actually seeing that come to fruition now, I believe. And like, there's been a lot of developments over the last 6 months. I think the next 6 months are going to be equally important. And we're going to see like real value moving in this way. Just continue to grow stable coins and tokenized assets from there.
So it sounds like the catalyst is once we get a coordinated federal regulatory framework.
I provide a slight edit there. I think it's businesses getting the relief for the structure, or doing things in a certain way that kind of fits within the regulatory framework. So it doesn't need to be like one giant step out at once, but I think there's opportunities for businesses like a WisdomTree approaching things in a certain way, putting out products like we've done with WisdomTree Prime, WisdomTree Connect, our tokenized money market fund that are solving these use cases. And I mean, we're seeing our tokenized money market fund has raised $100 million here to date. It's one of the leading flow gatherers for WisdomTree. So that's like real use case right there that we're already seeing in the market.
Right. Appreciate the insight as always, Will. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks. And thanks for joining me from Consensus. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.